Hello and greetings from the University of Buffalo. On behalf of the Office of Alumni Engagement and the UB School of Management, we are thrilled to have you with us for today's webinar presentation. My name is Christy Fields, and I serve as the Senior Director of Alumni Lifelong Engagement here at UB. And I'm joined by my wonderful colleague, Joy Rona, who will be assisting with questions throughout today's session. We're both so grateful you've chosen to spend part of your day with us for this educational and learning opportunity. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's featured presenters, Milind Sohoni and Jennifer Flagg. Milind is a professor and chair of the Operations Management and Strategy Department at the UB School of Management. He received his PhD in Industrial Systems and Operations Research at the Georgia Institute of Technology. Before joining UB, he was a full professor at the Indian School of Business in India. He also served as the Deputy Dean for Faculty and Research at the Deputy Dean for Academic Affairs at ISB. Professor Sohoni's major research areas include transportation and logistics, aviation, rail, and urban mobility, supply chain logistics, nonprofit operations, and healthcare services, analytics, and operations. He teaches at the master's, PhD, and executive levels. He has published in learning journals such as Management Science, Operations Research, M&SOM, Production and Operations Management, and Transportation Science. He is a senior associate editor at top-tier academic journals such as Operations Research, M&SOM, and POM journals. Among different accomplishments, he has won the Aviation Applications Best Dissertation Award and an honorable mention for the GB Danzig Best Dissertation Award. His work with Delta Airlines was a finalist at the Wagner Prize competition, and Professor Sohoni currently serves as the VP of Research for Production and Operations Management, India Society. Jennifer Flagg is a UB alumna and director of the UB School of Management Center for Supply Chain Analytics. Jennifer is a strategic leader in economic development, workforce training, technology development, or technology transfer, and knowledge translation. With a strong background in program development and strategic collaboration, she is committed to bridging industry and education to create lasting economic and social impact. Jennifer brings more than 2 decades of experience leading grant-funded projects, developing public-private partnerships, and advancing technology commercialization. Her work spans sectors including advanced technology, clean energy, environmental conservation, manufacturing, medical devices, and assistive technology, with a focus on translating research into real-world solutions. She is a frequent collaborator with industry, government, and nonprofit organizations, and is recognized for her ability to connect complex systems, thinking with practical implementation. Today's session will explore our multidisciplinary approach to advancing supply chain analytics through strategic industry academic collaborations, experiential student learning, and impactful research. You will learn how their work drives innovation, informs policy, and delivers measurable economic and societal benefits. With any remaining time, we'll reserve a few minutes at the end for your questions. Feel free to submit them at any point during the presentation, and we'll use those. At the end, there's a Q&A taskbar or a Q&A button on your Zoom taskbar, so you can send those to us at any time. And just a note, today's session will be recorded, and we'll send you a link within the next 24 hours. And now, please join me in welcoming both Milind and Jennifer. Welcome all.
Great. Thank you so much, Christy. It's a pleasure to be here. And thank you to all of the attendees for spending your lunch hour with us today. We're delighted to have this opportunity to share a bit about the Center for Supply Chain Analytics with all of you. So also many thanks to the Alumni Engagement Office and the team behind the Alumni Lifelong Learning. We're just so pleased to have this opportunity to be here today and thank them for all of their support. Great. So to kick things off, we are just going to do a couple quick introductions. You've already heard a lot about both Milind and my background. So yes, I am a 2-time alumna. As you can see in my Zoom profile there, my first degree was in the early 2000s from UB here, where I received my bachelor's in business administration with a concentration in marketing. Had such a fantastic experience. I came back a decade later for the executive MBA program, and what a tremendous experience that was. I would imagine imagine a few of you on the call today perhaps took that same path, or maybe the professional MBA or our standard MBA program as well. So welcome to all of you. A little about my background. I started off in the School of Public Health and Health Professions here at UB, focused on tech transfer, and that was really trying to bring inventions that were developed in an academic space out into market. So understanding best practices from industry and how those could apply to academic inventors to improve the chances of their commercial success. Then moved over to the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, where I worked on workforce development initiatives, focused particularly in the clean energy space, but also in advanced technology. While I was there, I just dipped my toe into the waters of the semiconductor industry and then came over to the School of Management just 1 year ago this month as director of the Center for Supply Chain Analytics, where a lot of my focus is on the semiconductor industry, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But I'd like to just pass it over to my colleague Milind now.
Well, thanks, Jennifer, and let me join everyone in welcoming the entire group. We are very glad to be presenting about the Center for Supply Chain Analytics. And thanks, Christy, for giving us a very detailed introduction. So I'm not going to repeat most of the stuff that Christy said, but I've been with UB for now 2.5 years. I serve as the professor and chair for the operations management and strategy area. Been in academia for more than 2 decades, mostly researching in areas related to transportation, logistics, supply chain analytics. The genesis of my work started out in the aviation industry, but then I've moved on to rail, freight, roadways, platform operations, digital technologies. And now, off late, I've also been doing a lot of work in healthcare analytics and public health. So I'll talk a little bit about it, eventually when we get to some of the newer projects right here. I've also worked with the industry. So after my master's, which I did at UT Austin, got a master's in manufacturing systems engineering, I worked with Ryder Logistics and Delta Airlines in their research groups, developing math programming, modules for solving large vehicle routing and scheduling problems, airline, fleet assignment problems, crew scheduling problems, revenue management and pricing, models. So been there, done that, and now I'm glad that I can sort of span both these areas of corporate research and academic research. So would love to talk to all of you about some of my experiences later. So a quick thing about what we want to do in this session. So I at least wanted to start out with describing some of the challenges related to supply chain management and supply chain analytics, right? And the need for such a center. And this is mostly academic. So I just will quickly at least give you a background about where we are coming from. And here we would talk on both sides, the supply side constraints, the demand facing challenges, and why analytics bridges both of these spaces within supply chain management. And then we'll move on to some of the projects that we have in this area. So Jen will talk a little bit about the Tech Hub project and the SCAN project, and the work that the center has been doing in that area. I'll go on to talk a little bit about the electric vehicles project that we are in collaboration with the School of Industrial and Systems Engineering here at the UB and the civil engineering folks. And then also talk a little bit about some of the ongoing projects which we are trying to onboard, working with companies like Rich Products. And the hope is that at the end of this presentation, I would have whet your appetite to get engaged and showcase the kind of research, experiential learning, dissemination ideas that we have. And broadly, this academic aim of building knowledge, creation of knowledge for the industry, and doing it through various means, not just engagements in terms of projects and for students, not just about research, but also writing cases, doing workshops, starting out with podcasts, doing webinars for industry and our students itself. So here is a quick thing, right? So let me just quickly talk about what we mean by supply chain management. And for those of you who work in this area and probably have, or may have also taken classes somewhere else, right? If I were to sort of broadly put out a practitioner's view of what supply chain management means, you can think of everything, right? Right from sourcing decisions all the way till the customer and everything in between. And if I had to sort of schematically represent that, it's not just about the firm and how enterprise resource planning happens within the firm. Resource planning for all its resources, right? Finances, marketing, operations, all of that, and the coordination that happens in between. But it is also about managing your customers, trying to figure out what is it that they want, what outcomes should supply chains achieve in order to meet up to customer expectations. And at the back end, it is worrying about everything about your suppliers, all the firms that are actually producing products and services for you to consume in order to produce your product and push it to the end consumer itself, right? And while these things, I mean, we just write these as, nice, simple phrases within boxes, there is a lot that is happening in terms of process design, product design, analysis, and simultaneously with this is the issue of, how is information being captured? How is the flow of finances being captured? How is the flow of products and services through each of these, entities that are engaged in this supply network together? How is that happening and who is coordinating that, right? So a very broad extended view would be to encompass all of this together, right? And supply chain, I mean, management does span across all these boundaries. And if you ask me, and as a professor of supply chain management or of operations, I think every firm, be it a product firm, be it a service firm or a combination, is part of some supply chain or some supply network producing products and services to meet up to some demand, right? So I think understanding the nuances here becomes critical, and figuring out how to do this better is also essential. Right, so next slide. Yeah. So just to sort of, give you a sense of the complexity of some of these operations. I mean, think about aircraft manufacturing, right? And I mean, there are two or three large aircraft manufacturers that we all know about. But if you really start looking at their supply chains, they are worldwide, right? I mean, they procure sub-assemblies and parts from all over the globe, which are then assembled at into the final aircraft that is produced at each of these geographies, right? And so either in Europe or in the US itself. And just think about the complexity of this kind of an operation. It's not just about manufacturing the product. It is not just about making sure that you have high quality standards and high safety standards that are maintained, but it is also about coordination. And coordination meaning that you need the right part at the right time to be produced at the right place in order to be present for the final aircraft to come into shape at the right place. Who is coordinating all of this? Who is making sure that all the entities in the supply chain are motivated enough to do the job and to do it well, right? And coordination, while one tends to think about it as a simple task, is a fairly complex task, right? Because it involves gathering information, it involves incentivizing players to do the right thing, and supply chain managers have to be involved in these activities in order to make this a very seamless process, right? Because the end product is going to be an aircraft that the airlines are going to lease or buy and use to transport passengers, and the passenger probably doesn't worry about how this aircraft came into existence. But for that to happen, all of this back end and coordination needs to take place. So when I say that firms are making these decisions and trying to figure out what to do, there are broadly two decisions. One is what to control themselves, which is the make decision, vertically integrated firms, and what is it that they rely on outside firms in order to supply, the buy decision, right? And these are not trivial. While I just use these as simple phrases, I mean, these are very complex decisions that firms have to make. Right? So next slide. So broadly, when I say that this coordination complexity is very high, and we as supply chain researchers worry about how do you get that kind of coordination, we look at within the firm. So think, how do I get product coordination with a production unit and a transportation unit, right? I could just say, hey, both of you got to be low cost, but low cost to one means very different things than the other. One could be, optimizing for its batch production, and the other one could be optimizing for its lot size to transport. But those two may be out of sync, and as a result, inventory could build up right at the interface, and you as a firm are no longer low cost, right? While individual KRAs and KPIs may be low cost for those two functional organizations within the firm, across them, it's no longer low cost. But the same thing across firms itself, that, if you say that I want to be a low fare airline, means I got to have cost controls in place, but then my entire supply chain at the back end has to also be very cost conscious and make decisions in that particular way. So their processes must be aligned with mine that are intending to produce low cost outcomes, right? So that's where the coordination within the firm and outside the firm starts becoming extremely challenging. And the role of data and information and analytics now starts becoming even more important. And today, of course, with the kind of information and data that are captured, I think getting to this level of coordination is crucial, right? So that you can have supply chains producing outcomes that are necessary. So when we take this holistic view, and I sort of draw this picture not as a representative picture, but just to sort of emphasize the fact that we take a very holistic view of supply chain analytics, supply chain management, which is essentially a combination of pure markets where I can rely on price controls or simple price controls to or price efficiency in order to procure, to all the way thinking about contractual arrangements in markets, thinking of interorganizational processes and internal processes within the firm, all of it together and coordinating across all the entities within the firm and outside the firm, right? So that's sort of the very big perspective we take, and when we engage with firms, we want to look at questions of these magnitudes, right, and try to figure out how best we can help firms achieve the outcomes that they desire. Yeah. So yes, we have to start small, and rather than doing this in its entirety, what we chose as we are growing up as a firm is to focus on a few things that we can begin with as a center, and then the hope is to grow in multiple directions, right? So one is that we want to engage with industrial partners, for multiple reasons. One is that they can bring problems to us, they can expose us to the challenges that they are facing. And hopefully we should be able to work with them, one, to understand the challenge and then come up with some solutions. These industry collaborations need not always be about projects or research projects. These could be, simple things like, okay, I need a student team to help me think through these challenges, or document this, or build me a system that can solve this kind of a problem, all the way to, oh, here is an open-ended question, we don't know how to solve this, can you help us think through some of this, and maybe there is a research opportunity over there. The collateral benefit of doing much of this is our students get engaged, our students learn, they become employable and maybe valuable to the firms itself. And the hope is that through all of this, we can start developing a body of knowledge as a center, which we can then disseminate through multiple ways. One is, of course, bring it into our classrooms, have our industry partners maybe collaborate with us to come in our classrooms, give guest lectures, talk to our students, develop case studies, write white papers, have workshops, podcasts, webinars where we start the activity of dissemination and sort of move into the space of being a thought leader in this area, right? And help transformative education for our students. So that's our intent, and that's where we want to start. So to do this, what we have chosen right now is to focus on 4 areas. One is global commerce. Second is advanced manufacturing. Third is sustainable operations, largely the area of sustainability. And fourth is healthcare and healthcare analytics itself. Now, seemingly different and orthogonal industries, but not really, because from our understanding and techniques that we can deploy in analytical methods, we can bring to bear both analytical modeling, empirical modeling, use of data, use of AI, ML techniques. we think that we can align our faculty, our students along these dimensions in order to pick up, projects and work on them and start providing solutions to industrial partners. Right? So maybe I'll hand over to Jennifer to talk a little bit about how we are organized and how we plan to achieve this. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Milind. So next slide here. So in terms of organization, Milind and I now as the center leaders. I'm the executive director. Milind is the faculty director. We have a deep bench, though. We have just a few photographs of some of our affiliated faculty here. And to just touch on some of their areas of expertise, Dr. Natalie Simpson, who's Associate Dean for Graduate Programs and also a professor in Operations Management and Strategy, very focused on emergency services, emergency response, supply chain logistics, and also the digital distribution of conventional instruction. So how do we take our seated courses and transform those into an online learning environment? Professor Nalin Suresh, Associate Dean for Faculty Research and Centers, who was also just granted the title of SUNY Distinguished Professor, has a focus on global supply networks, supply chain disruptions, U.S. and global manufacturing, international trade, logistics, infrastructure and economic development, areas that are critical to so many of the challenges that we're seeing unfold right now with the geopolitical climate and all that's happening with tariffs, for example, that are causing disruptions in our supply chain and certainly changes to the way that we're thinking about how we source the components needed to produce products here domestically. Professor Aditya Vendantam is an associate professor in the Department of Operations Management Strategy, focused on sustainability in operations and supply chains, clean energy technologies, and also recycling. Mike Mincheng Wei is associate professor and also the faculty director of our new Masters in Supply Chain Management program. That's offered in both online and seated formats, just launched this summer with a cohort in each in the online program as well as the seated. Mike's research interests range from dynamic pricing and revenue management to strategic consumer behavior, online learning and decision-making, online recommendation systems, assortment optimization, and high-dimensional machine learning. So this just gives you the tip of the iceberg in terms of the breadth of expertise that the Center for Supply Chain Analytics is able to tap into within both our department, Operations Management and Strategy, also in the larger School of Management. Of course, every great team is supported by a wealth of students who are just so eager to apply their learning in the classroom to real-world situations, to have projects that are directly involving industry, to gain that just that hands-on learning experience, and to make connections as well, and to network with those in our community who may become their eventual employers. We're very fortunate to have 12 graduate students working with us this fall, and we also have a few who graduated in May who are sticking around for a volunteer appointment, transferring their knowledge to the students who just came in this fall. So in addition to the bench that we have here with faculty, staff, and students, we're also supported by an advisory council. So really here we're looking to our council for their external perspective. What are they seeing happening in industry? Where are there opportunities for the center to get involved and contribute either research or hands-on resources through both faculty, staff, and students? What referrals might they be able to provide to help us advance projects that are in the pipeline? And really being a sounding board for what we're looking at ahead with our strategic priorities for the center. So right now we have a relatively small council and we're looking to grow. We're thrilled to have Peter Ahrens, who's executive director of the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Alliance, a group that is really focused on helping our region's manufacturers, grow and find new opportunities to expand their businesses. So the perspective he brings is helpful as it really encompasses so many manufacturers in the region, not very industry specific. Our two other members, Inderpal Sinai and Rupashan Muggin, are both more focused on the semiconductor industry, and we'll talk in a little bit about the New York Smart I Corridor Tech Hub project that they have also been involved in. Paul is from Global Foundries, supply chain manager there. So it's great to have his perspective from a large, multinational firm that is operating in New York State over in Malta, and Rupa Shanmugam, who is president and CEO of Sopark, a small contract manufacturer here in Buffalo, who is also part of the semiconductor supply chain. So as I say, we're trying to grow our advisory council. We're hoping to host a meeting this winter. We do have 2 seats open right now, really looking to round out the expertise needed to advance our efforts in healthcare, sustainability, and global commerce. So if this piques your interest, I encourage you to send us an email at mgt-csca@buffalo.edu. And that email address goes to both Milind and I, so it's the quickest way to reach the 2 of us at once. And we'd love to have a conversation with you. So beyond the School of Management, I should say beyond the center, we have a number of other centers in the School of Management first, who we also rely on to sort of expand that bench and that breadth of expertise that we are able to bring to research and industry collaboration projects. So those to mention, Center for AI Business Innovation, AI is sort of the magic happening everywhere right now, and we're thrilled to have a few of our colleagues who are experts in this area who can help us consider how AI tools can be applied to solving supply chain problems and creating visualizations with the data that we're collecting and analyzing. The Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership has been around for many years now, many decades now, and is a fantastic partner on many projects, but primarily the Tech Hub project right now in leading outreach to small businesses in the Buffalo area who are interested in either expanding their footprint in the semiconductor supply chain or perhaps entering this industry newly and sort of pivoting in from another adjacent area where they've already been working. Our Center for Leadership and Global Impact has also been a fantastic partner. We're always thrilled to showcase our students' work and our faculty's work at their annual conference, which I believe will be coming up this spring. And then lastly, the Center for Marketing Analysis, working with them on projects where we have multiple research angles that we're working on for one particular company. And so we're really thrilled to be able to bring multiple perspectives, the marketing side and the supply chain side, to bear for solving particular industry challenges. Beyond the School of Management, as Milind mentioned earlier, we collaborate closely with a number of centers in the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, the Stephen Still Institute for Sustainable Transportation and Logistics. We have a joint degree program with them. We have folks from industrial and systems engineering as well as civil who work together with the School of Management to produce courses that are really targeted towards those individuals who are interested in transportation in particular, and of course the logistics that is part of that. The Center for Advanced Semiconductor Technologies, part of the School of Electrical Engineering in SEAS, has been a fantastic collaborator on the Tech Hub project as well, as has the Center for Industrial Effectiveness, who is sort of an industry outreach arm for the School of Engineering. So a lot of synergies there. And again, just these center affiliations showcase the breadth of the expertise that we can bring to bear on collaborative projects. So what are we working on? A few projects we'd like to touch base on here today. We keep mentioning the New York Smart Eye Corridor Tech Hub, and I'll go into that first. We'll talk a little about an electric vehicle project we've been working on with support from the Stephen Still Institute for Sustainable Transportation and Logistics. We have a few snapshots here of our faculty and students presenting. On the left, it was a Stephen Still Advisory Board meeting last year where we were presenting results of the EV project you'll hear about in a few minutes. And on the right, we have a few students presenting at the Center for Leadership and Global Impact Conference last April. So the New York Smart Eye Corridor Tech Hub, what is this? So this is a $40 million grant awarded by the Economic Development Administration to organizations in Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse with the goal of really building and expanding the entire semiconductor ecosystem. So we're not just talking about supply chains here. That's obviously a key component of it, but also the workforce space and also innovation, what innovations are coming out of our region that can then lend themselves to growth in semiconductors. There are 4 component projects that are part of the Tech Hub, shown here. Of course, at the top, we have to have some governance helping to coordinate the activities across the various projects. And so that would be the Innovation Office led by Center State CEO in Syracuse, One Rock in Rochester, and Buffalo Niagara Partnership here in Buffalo. And I have to give a shout out to Joe Stefko, who is a UB alum, who is our Regional Innovation Officer and CEO at One Rock, who was also president of the Alumni Association. He's our fearless leader helping to coordinate and bring us all together. So another UB alum at the helm. So the SCAN project, Supply Chain Activation Network, this is the project that is housed here at UB. We are looking to double the size of the semiconductor supply chain regionally over the next decade. Step Up, Semiconductor Talent and Employer Partnership. Monroe Community College is leading the charge here, trying to understand a bit about industry's needs for workforce development and talent, looking at the training programs that exist now and identifying gaps where existing programs could either be expanded or new program development is necessary. And then finally, C3, the Commercialization and Collaboration Center component project led by Syracuse University. This project is focused on putting dollars in hands of firms who are interested in advancing a technology to bring it to market. And so grants range from a few $1,000s to $500,000 to engage Syracuse, Cornell, RIT, University of Rochester, or the University of Buffalo. And you're able to tap into both the intellectual and physical assets at these institutions using these grant dollars. Again, all really with a focus on expanding the semiconductor ecosystem. So I'll talk a little more about the SCAN team, as that's the UB project. So we have 2 centers at UB who are involved in leadership of the Supply Chain Activation Network. It would be our Center for Supply Chain Analytics, and as I mentioned earlier, our Center for Entrepreneurial Leadership. We are supported by an economic development organization and a manufacturing extension partnership in each Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse. So you can see the logos of our partners here. Invest Buffalo Niagara and Insight in Buffalo, Greater Rochester Enterprise and NextCore in Rochester, and Center State CEO and TDO Train, Develop, Optimize in Syracuse. And what they are able to do is leverage grant funds from the EDA to help companies to bridge the gap from where they are now and where they'd like to be in the semiconductor industry. So perhaps you're looking at an expansion project and you are in need of some low-cost loans. That's where our economic development organizations can come into play and put you into touch with the resources that can help you find new locations, gain those low-cost loans, find the workforce talent that you need for your expansion. On the other side of that, the manufacturing extension partnership organizations offer really hands-on technical assistance that's needed to get businesses to the point where they're ready to serve a particular buyer. So for example, perhaps your organization would need ISO certification or CMMC, which is the Cybersecurity Maturity Model certification in order to serve a particular buyer. Maybe it's a fab, maybe it's a tier 1, maybe it's DoD directly. Those MEP, manufacturing extension partnership organizations, are able to provide that technical assistance to help you ramp up your capabilities. So as I said, our goal is really to double the size of the semiconductor supply chain by 2035. The idea is that by creating this localized supply chain, that we're increasing resilience domestically to whatever is happening overseas. We see a lot of issues right now with critical materials, where we would like to find domestic capabilities that can overcome some of those challenges. In terms of student involvement, we have, as I say, 12 students on the Center for Supply Chain Analytics team this semester, and a handful of them are working on the Tech Hub project. We have a mix of students with backgrounds in MIS, in the various MS programs, and also MBAs, who are doing a lot of work to understand who the buyers are, what their needs are, who the suppliers are, where the pivot prospect opportunities might be for those potential suppliers, and creating databases, business cases, marketing plans, and of course, visualizations to help firms see where the opportunity is for them in the semiconductor supply chain. So I'll wrap up the discussion on SCAN with just a touch on some of the activities and opportunities for engagement. So I mentioned a supplier database. We're doing a lot of work right now to help firms create capability statements that showcase what it is they can bring to the semiconductor supply chain. All of that information then goes to populate a back-end database where buyers who are looking for potential suppliers domestically here in New York State can search the database to find firms who have the capabilities and the certifications that they would require. So I have Get on the Map here coming soon in first quarter 2026. We will have an interactive map on the Tech Hub website where folks can go and input information about their capabilities, input information about their buying needs, and then learn about both the buyer and supplier sides. Documenting buyer needs and requirements. So a big piece of this work is helping firms understand specifics in terms of what is it that the buyers in the semiconductor supply chain would like to procure locally here right now. And what does it take for me to become a player in this industry? And so if you navigate to management.buffalo.edu/scan-doc, you will find our opportunity guide for the semiconductor supply chain, which has a tremendous amount of information about New York State resources that are available to support firms, an overview of the Tech Hub projects that I mentioned earlier, and a listing of requirements for serving fabs. We're expanding that right now to look at the tier one buyers so that we can create a clear picture of exactly what it takes to become a supplier to those organizations. Providing resources, I mentioned our economic development organization and manufacturing extension partnership groups are here to provide technical assistance, referrals. We also do have some incentive funding available for firms who engage in technical assistance in the range of $10,000 to $25,000 to help offset the cost of your exploration of entering this industry. And then lastly, matchmaking. So last July, we hosted an event here at UB, bringing together buyers and suppliers who are part of this supply chain or would like to be part of this supply chain to have those conversations to facilitate collaboration and create networking opportunities. And Milind, I will pass it over to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Jen. So continuing on, the kinds of projects that we've been taking at the center. So this is a second project. We've sort of given it a name, Understanding Demand Drivers, but this is really for a firm that is in the puzzle space, right? So these brain teasers and puzzle space. And what the question that they asked us was to figure out what were the drivers for the sales of some of their products, both in the brick and mortar channel as well as on the online channel, this retail through Amazon itself, right? Now, while they don't have a lot of pricing power because that is controlled by Amazon, they do understand the supply side constraints and they have enough data about what sold and when and at what quantity each of their puzzles sold. And so the question that they asked us is, can you figure out from the supply side what are the drivers that affect the sales for each of their products? And we have a PhD student working on this project. It's part of her eventual dissertation. And the question that she has been looking at is that if you look at the space of puzzles and why puzzles become interesting, there are multiple features to a puzzle, right? And this is, so what we understood from the firm is that they use various renowned artists in order to use their pictures to create these puzzles. And so the color scheme, the number of cuts on the puzzle, all of that starts mattering. And what the student is trying to do is use artificial intelligence techniques in order to figure out which features matter, which don't, and then do some time series clustering on the sales patterns through the years that we have the sales data for, and try to sort of understand how did the various puzzles perform and link or associate, the features that she has been able to extract about these puzzles to the clusters or the sales time series clusters itself, right? So this is an ongoing project, and the initial results that she has been able to get through this kind of work and through figuring out these features and then also doing cluster analysis on the time series data has been very encouraging. The firm sort of likes some of her initial results itself, and so they are continuing to engage with us. Additionally, they're also working with the Center for Marketing Analytics on some other projects which are also related to, these kinds of questions, but more on the retail side, right? So more on the retail dynamic side itself. And we had one grad student, helping our PhD student with much of the programming tasks and, developing some of these models. And here the slide lists, some of the skills that the grad student had coming in, right? So we wanted somebody who knew machine learning, was proficient in programming with Python and R. And then, of course, because there was a need to extract features from pictures of these puzzles, so image processing tools were also a familiarity with, use of image processing tools was also necessary. Next slide. In a similar vein, we've been engaged with actually a UB alum for another project, and this is related to predicting prices, freight prices for sea cargo. And while we are not going to look at all the commodities that are transported by international shipping or sea cargo, we are only focused on a few of them. And the data that the firm provided to us was, how do these aggregate prices for these commodities move across the year? And also all other covariate information that we could think of, right? So in terms of, which month, which day, which liner, where was the origin point, where was the destination, destination being, of course, a US port, and the origin could be somewhere in Asia or somewhere else. And also what was the aggregate price? We are not, looking at specific commodity prices. And in addition to the data that the firm provided, we had a couple of students actually work and even get more shipping related data, particularly look at regulatory information, look at macroeconomic decision variable information in order to augment this data set, so that we could start thinking of developing some empirical models. As of now, I think they are still crude. They still need to be refined. But to start predicting how do prices move for these commodities over the years, right? And what are the predictors of these kinds of prices? Now, even, an important question in this would be, what was the impact of tariffs? The fact that if people knew that tariffs were coming at a particular point in time, did, a lot of inventory move up front? And if so, then what happened to the prices? So one could also study, the impact of these exogenous shocks, right? The regulatory shocks that keep coming in. And does that then enable us to sort of tease out what was the cause of a particular price hike or a price dip, right? Depending on what is happening in this industry. Once again, we had a couple of students who helped us with this, and there is, of course, going to be an ongoing need for students to get involved with this, looking at proficiency, because all the data comes to us in Excel sheets. There has to be proficiency in Excel, visualization to begin with, and your ability to start using statistical packages, to do initially descriptive statistics, but then eventually get into predictive statistics and even maybe use AI and ML techniques to start doing this kind of work. Next slide. There is an ongoing project which sort of the center took over, but this was a project that was initiated by the Sustainable Transport Institute with the IE department and the civil engineering folks. And Professor Andrew Whitaker has been leading that effort. But the chunk that was sort of given to one of our faculty members who's now working with the center, and a whole bunch of grad students are involved in this project, was trying to answer the question about what are the opportunities for IC, so internal combustion engine and component manufacturers, to pivot to electric vehicle manufacturing, right? And various components for that. Now, this is seems like a very, hard problem to solve, because even before one does any kind of, analytical models or any kind of empirical models, there is a very great need to first understand which companies work in the IC space, which companies could potentially pivot into the EV space, and what are the requirements, right? So what the students and the professor who's involved with this as a PI from our side, they have been doing some incredible sort of, I would say, data mining kind of work, web scraping, using information that is available in various, industrial domain to figure out which companies, which firms in which parts of the state of New York are involved in these kinds of supply chains, right? And they have been able to identify and map all the way to source, like individual components, right? Who are the manufacturers of what? And then once that database is ready and one has a good understanding about the capabilities and competencies of these firms, then of course would be the next question as to what would be the opportunity to pivot, and what would it take to pivot into the EV space, right? Now there is a very related interesting question which we have just started thinking about in this space, is that given the uncertainty about the demand for EVs, what should a firm's strategy be in order to make the choice of pivoting in the first place, right? Because if, like, for example, in the US, regulations are changing, market demand is changing, people who were earlier in IC engine manufacturers may have thought of moving to EVs, but now again the IC engine space is picking up. However, worldwide, Asia, Europe, EVs are on the rise. So there is this, very strategic question, which has operational implications as to when and why should a firm pivot, right? And what are the risks associated with this kind of a decision itself. But here we have several grad students who are working with the current team, largely in using, a lot of web scraping techniques, programming, and doing this kind of basic analysis, right, for identification and extraction of data.
Great. Thanks so much, Milind. And just one other point on this project, we're working with our faculty and students now to put together a white paper that we hope to release this winter. So stay tuned to our website for details there on what we've been working on and next steps.
Right. So sort of to think about the future and where we want to go, right? And what we've been trying. One is that we believe, and this was a question actually, Wendy, I don't know, maybe she's listening in, is one of the motivations to start such a center, right? I mean, and house it at UB. Of course, we have the capabilities. We want our faculty to sort of get involved in building these industry partnerships and work on problems that are, relevant to the industry. But Buffalo has a very unique geographical position, right? I mean, it is a border town. It sits right on, and it is a major logistics town, right? I mean, if you look at the cross-border trade that happens between Canada and the US, a large portion of it comes into Buffalo through various modes, right? I mean, there is, of course, the canal, and then there is, road traffic. So the entire cross-border logistics domain itself and the impact of regulations is an area worth studying. And we believe that there are many interesting problems that we are uniquely positioned to answer just given our geographic location, right? And these could be logistics related, these could be supply chain related, these could be warehousing and 3PL kind of questions, and these could be all the way till, planning, inventory, and figuring out, other such problems. Another big, and you probably want to go back, Jen.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. Another area that we believe where we are again very uniquely positioned is in circular supply chain sustainability, right? There is a significant emphasis on energy and the use of renewable energy or what would say clean energy, right? And initially there was a talk about hydrogen, but now there is talk about nuclear. But I believe that from a supply chain perspective, an energy supply chain perspective, there are some very unique questions that one can answer or help with, right? And understand. For us, it's both. We are again in a good position to do that. And third, healthcare supply chains and healthcare analytics, both public health as well as private health, right? UP has a huge medical center, college, and there are so many healthcare facilities in and around, Buffalo, and each one of them have very unique problems that we can, address and solve using some of the techniques that we are very good at, right? And the use of operations in healthcare is very well known. I mean, it is, right from factory physics that is used in the management of processes in ERs and hospitals to the use of AI technologies in diagnostics and the human AI interface and understanding, how behavior and both behaviorally and culturally, it would matter. I think there are some very interesting questions in the healthcare space that again UB can answer, and we, given our positioning here in as a university in this area, I think we should be able to start addressing. So we are exploring options in these three areas, and we hope that in the near future we should sort of be able to generate some projects in these areas. Right. So how are we trying to sort of get our feet wet, and how are we trying to engage? And this is something that we are, I mean, it's not entirely novel, but it is definitely new in terms of its implementation at UB. So we've started a master's program in supply chain analytics, right? So we have this, and it has an online offline version. And as part of that, entire course, we have a capstone course, MGO 647. Essentially, it is a supervised learning or research kind of project-based course, right? So what we have is teams of students, and what we have been doing is soliciting projects from firms. So we go, we talk to them, we ask them for a project that they are ready to sort of, give to us, which we can, from a faculty side, we can sort of help our students work on. But as a firm, they probably should only commit some time and material so that, they can give some data, they can have some contact person that can work with our students and advise our students. And the hope is that our students will work on real projects which have real impact and provide value to the firm at the end of the semester, either write a report or have something that is implementable. We only caution the firms that, okay, don't give us something that should be production ready, because students are not expected to sort of get to that stage. But this would be great learning for our students, and this would help us as faculty to get a first look into some of these projects. These could be then eventually developed into cases, white papers. The hope is that if there was something interesting, could lead to a thought in research, or could lead to other ways of for us to develop our curriculum within UB itself. So we are experimenting this. The center is taking the lead in sort of organizing this course. So that's the sort of innovation that we are doing in this kind of a program. And Jen and I and some of our faculty member will sort of co-advise students as a group, rather than this being run by an individual professor as a separate semester-long class, right? So that's something that we are up to. And we want to be this conduit to create these partnerships, create mechanisms for students, faculty, and industry members to interact. Many formats, many ways in which we want to do this, but we described a few during this session, but there are other ways of do webinars, do podcasts, and get this activity going within the center itself. Yeah.
Great. Thanks so much, Milind. So I know we only have a couple minutes left. We have a few more slides. Maybe we can just buzz through quickly. So I think Milind did a great job capturing all of these opportunities to get involved, whether it's collaborative projects that are engaging students or faculty through the capstone course, or just independent of that. We welcome you to come and share your knowledge through keynote speaking opportunities at our events, workshops, panels, also doing guest lectures in classes. And then, of course, the opportunity to join the Center for Supply Chain Analytics Advisory Board as well. A couple upcoming events. If you are a member of the Buffalo Niagara Partnership, on December 8th, there is an I-Corridor, New York Smart I-Corridor Opportunity Exchange happening from 1 to 5 that day. We will be hosting an event in Rochester in spring 2026. So keep an eye on the Supply Chain Center for Supply Chain Analytics website for future details on that. And also a plug for the Western New York Supply Chain Breakfast Series hosted by Jack Ampuja over on the Canisius University campus, the first Wednesday of each month from 7 to 9 a.m. So if you're interested in learning more about that, again, send an email to our mgt-csca@buffalo.edu. So I think we'll pause there and see if any questions came up that we can answer in the short time we have left here.
Oh, Milind and Jennifer, thank you so very much. Milind, you have been on top of a lot of questions as they've come through. So grateful for that. And I know I want to get you both back to your classes and office hours here very shortly. But we are so grateful to have the both of you share your knowledge, your expertise, your time with us today, and are so fortunate to have you part of our UB community and all that you are doing. So thank you for that. There are ways to keep in touch on this final slide. Make sure you do see that there. We will send the recording. You'll get this information tomorrow as well within the follow-up email. But with that said, on behalf of the School of Management, the UV Alumni Engagement Office, thank you, Milind. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you all for joining us. Milind and Jennifer, any final words before we do conclude for the day?
No, so I would like to, encourage all our alums to participate with our centers, right? I think this is just a great opportunity for us to engage with our alums, and for them to also come back to the school and contribute, right? I would just love to build these connections. Yeah.
Same. I'll echo Milind's comments and just so grateful that so many of you spent your lunch hour with us today. Thanks again. We do hope to hear from many of you as a follow-up and look forward to connecting.
Outstanding. Thank you again. Jennifer, thank you, Milind. Thank you all. Take care. Stay well. Enjoy the rest of your day. Go Bulls. Thanks all.